Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would take a look overall at this little video that I found very particularly interesting. And all in all, I thought that I would review a little segment by Skip and Shannon Undisputed. And the game overall that they're going to be mainly talking about in this little video is going to be that of the LA Rams versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Or, of course, as Skip Bayless would call them, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But anyways, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would review this little segment because I found it very particularly interesting. I think that I say this every year whenever it comes to the NFL playoffs, but I think I get more excited every year overall to see how differently things are going to transpire. But to be quite honest with you, just in my 10 plus years of watching NFL football, I don't think that I've ever been as excited for a second round round of the playoffs, a divisional round of the playoffs, as I have been this year. Because when I take a look at every single matchup, in my opinion, is going to really have me at the edge of my seat. When I watch the Tennessee Titans versus Cincinnati Bengals, those are two teams all in all that not only are they different, but I could see either or potentially winning that game. If you're asking me, in my opinion, who do I think is going to win that game? I think more than likely is going to be the Tennessee Titans, just because they're a little bit more experienced than that of the Cincinnati Bengals. They're both somewhat similarly talented, but I would have to say that the Tennessee Titans are probably a little bit more talented. That and first year quarterbacks in the playoffs, they don't usually do very well in that of the big games. But Joe Burrow, he is a very talented quarterback. He could pull it off, especially if they get off to an early lead or if the Tennessee Titans somehow make a couple of mistakes. Derrick Henry, I do believe, is coming back in, and of course he had a broken foot, I believe. So I don't know really how great he's going to perform. Maybe that could affect their performance, but I am going to predict the Tennessee Titans just because they seem very decently talented. And Ryan Tannehill, actually, for his standards, even though I would have never called him elite, he's just one of those quarterbacks that he doesn't seem very high level, but kind of like Case Keenum with the Minnesota Vikings a few years ago. If it works if it works, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. When it comes to now, of course, they haven't necessarily won a Super Bowl, but they have been able to make a couple of deep playoff runs. So we'll see overall what happens with that game. But I'm going to be predicting the Tennessee Titans, but that's a 50-50 game in my opinion, or at least a 60-40 game. You have the San Francisco 49ers versus the Green Bay Packers. And even though the Green Bay Packers, when it comes down to it, their second round matchup last year, in my opinion, really did not interest me because the LA Rams, I think that they're one of those teams that just barely made the playoffs. They were able to beat the Seattle Seahawks in the first round, but I did not think that the Seattle Seahawks or LA Rams were really going to have that much of a chance against that of the Green Bay Packers. But the 49ers, in my opinion, they actually have a better chance overall this year of defeating the Green Bay Packers than what, a lot of the teams in the playoffs last year did. The reason why I say that is because the 49ers, they have a very decently experienced team when it comes to playoff play. They've been to a Super Bowl just a few years ago. And Aaron Rodgers, historically, at least against the 49ers in the playoffs, he usually actually has not performed very well against them, at least as of recently. He lost to Colin Kaepernick in very dominant fashion, I believe, not that long ago, or at least, well, I guess several years ago, so long ago, somewhat. And then, of course, he lost to Jimmy G, and overall, that very talented defense of the 49ers, where actually that was one of the worst performances that I've ever seen by Aaron Rodgers in a playoff game, and he lost to them quite dominantly. I'm not going to say that I'm predicting the 49ers to upset the Green Bay Packers, but I do think that if they were to upset them, I would not be shell-shocked when it comes down to it. I would say that the Green Bay Packers, in my opinion, they're a 70-30 favorite. It's kind of like when I saw Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos. I was expecting Teofimo Lopez to win, but when he got upset, I was not super duper, shell-shocked. It's the same thing here, but I do expect that the Green Bay Packers, I think all in all that they're just going to be a little bit too good and a little bit too experienced for that team, but you never know. But I assume that they're going to take care of business, especially in that Lambeau field, and they're going to have a huge weather advantage there. So we'll see all in all what happens there. And then, of course, you have the Buffalo Bills versus the Kansas City Chiefs, which, of course, is another excellent game, and that really is a coin toss game. Can the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen, who in my opinion is one of the greatly talented quarterbacks that I see around the NFL league today, who in my opinion could future later on become a first ballot Hall of Famer if he continues going the way that he is going. Can Josh Allen get over the hump and take advantage of the situation over the Kansas City Chiefs? Because the Kansas City Chiefs, even though they are talented, they are going to be up against the ropes against the Buffalo Bills. That's a very interesting matchup, and I'm actually picking the Buffalo Bills to win that matchup, and I do hope overall that they actually win that matchup. Not that I don't respect Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, but I just do hope to see the Buffalo Bills make it this year because I think that they have a very high amount of potential. And I think that if they are going to go any further or possibly win a Super Bowl or two later on down the line, they have to get past the Kansas City Chiefs. This is when they're vulnerable when it comes down to it. And if you don't get past them now, in my opinion, more than likely Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, they're never going to get past them. But in my opinion, I'm actually going to pick the Buffalo Bills If Josh Allen performs anywhere near to what he did in that first round matchup against the New England Patriots, in my opinion, the Kansas City Chiefs are more than likely going to lose. But it's going to be very interesting. Not only that, but the Buffalo Bills' defense, I think, is better. And I think all in all that maybe gives them more of a chance. But we'll see what happens because I believe it's going to be in Kansas City, Missouri. But I can't wait for that game. But the game overall, in my opinion, that by far is the hardest to predict, in my opinion, of who is going to win. And a true coin toss matchup, the biggest coin toss matchup, in my opinion, the closest game out of any of these games, is this LA Rams versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers basically matchup. Now, some people may say, well, what the hell are you talking about? Why would you have this 50-50? Because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they've already proved that, they've been there, done that. They won the Super Bowl last year. They have Tom Brady, who's still very good at this point in time in his career. He's won 7 Super Bowls, yada, 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 yada. Bruce Arians. Yes, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, at the current moment in time, they are missing a certain amount of pieces that they had last year, and they do not have now. They no longer have Antonio Brown, who, of course, got cut when it came down to it overall. And also, I believe they no longer have Chris Godwin. I'm not sure if that's because of an injury or because he got cut, but that's just what I heard from Mr. Skip Bayless. And there's a certain amount of other injuries, I believe, on defense and running. And when it comes down to it, the big thing overall is this. You know what this matchup kind of reminds me of? It almost reminds me of a Sugar Ray Leonard versus Tommy Hearns type of fight when that fight happened. Or the LA Lakers versus the Detroit Pistons when they fought off overall in that excellent 7-game series all the way back in 1988. Why does it remind me of that? Because when I take a look overall, these are both highly talented teams. But the differences overall between these teams, in my opinion, are very marginal. But it's a very, very big, it's like a big marginal difference, if that makes sense. The talent overall is somewhat marginal. But the big difference between them is that one overall knows how to get over the hump and the other one overall struggles a little bit with that. It may struggle a little bit with decision making. It may struggle overall a little bit with game planning. My point being is this. When you actually take a look at the LA Rams at the current moment in time, I believe actually that they're probably the more talented roster than what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are right now. And because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're still healing and they still have some injuries that they don't really know how things are going to play out. The LA Rams just may have enough talent. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to be in Tampa Bay or LA. I kind of forgot to check that. But when it comes down to it, like I said, it's going to be very interesting because of that reason. I think that this really is a coin toss game. And the big question is, will the LA Rams, will their talent be able to overall show at the end of the day that, they were the better team in the game, that they were able to game plan better? Or will also the very talented team in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, will their experience overall, their leadership with Tom Brady and that of Bruce Arians, and their experience overall and know how to get over the hump, will that prove overall to be the advantage? That's why I compare it to both of those things, because Sugar Ray Leonard was a person, in my opinion, that all around, he was a greater fighter than Tommy Hearns. But when you actually take a look at Tommy Hearns physically, and even in certain skills, it looked like Tommy Hearns overall, especially in that first fight, was actually more talented than that of Sugar Ray Leonard. He was actually outboxing Sugar Ray Leonard. It even looked like in certain terms that he was faster than Sugar Ray Leonard, definitely stronger than Sugar Ray Leonard, taller than Sugar Ray Leonard, had a better reach than Sugar Ray Leonard, had that good right hand and good left hook. It looked like he, all in all, was way more talented than Sugar Ray Leonard, or at least a decent amount more talented. But the thing that separated Sugar Ray Leonard and Tommy Hearns not only was a chin when it came down to it, but also a little bit of boxing IQ and even a little bit of defense. And Sugar Ray Leonard, in my opinion, he's not necessarily the Floyd Mayweather Jr. of defense, but he had better defense than that of a Tommy Hearns, and Tommy Hearns always left his chin out in the open. It was somewhat the same thing that I see with the Detroit Pistons and LA Lakers back in 1988. Both extremely talented teams. The Detroit Pistons, actually, during that time, I believe that they were actually more talented than what the LA Lakers were, just by a marginal difference, just by a slight difference. But the reason why the LA Lakers were able to win that series, maybe not only because the injuries overall were able to help them a little bit, because Isaiah Thomas, I believe, had an injury, a little bit, even though he still continued to play a little bit. But on top of that, they just knew overall how to get over the hump. They had that experience. They had that confidence overall. They basically had that going into there, and they were just able to escape with one more ring. The big question is about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now I'm saying it overall, but the big question overall is about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Will they be able to get past that of the LA Rams? We'll see what happens. It's going to be very particularly interesting. And in my opinion, if the LA Rams, if they end up getting past the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it's going to be very difficult, in my opinion, for them to more than likely get past the Green Bay Packers, because I do assume, and I will predict the Green Bay Packers to make the NFC Championship. But if the Buccaneers somehow get past the LA Rams, if I were the Green Bay Packers, I would be very, very worried about that matchup. That's a team that is very heavily experienced. They're healing overall by the moment when it comes down to it. And if they were to face off against the Green Bay Packers in the NFC Championship, even in Lambeau Field, Will Aaron Rodgers overall have flashbacks of that game last year? It's very possible. But the big question about this LA Rams versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers game is, first of all, how is Sean McVay going to plan against them? Will overall he be able to get the offense going? And the other big question is, will he be able to plan somewhat defensively, or will the defensive coordinator overall be able to get to Tom Brady early? Because that's going to be very, very important. Tom Brady, of course, is very hard to rattle in almost any type of game situation, but the only time that I've ever usually seen Tom Brady beat is when the defense usually literally almost tried to kill this man, whether it was against that of the New York Giants or the 2016 Denver Broncos, or it was just over a team that was, pretty more decently talented like the Philadelphia Eagles, and they just went tit for tat. That's the only way, in my opinion, that you're going to defeat Tom Brady. It's the same way if you're going to defeat a great fighter. You have to have a similar talent level. You have to have somewhat of similar boxing IQ. And we'll see what the LA Rams do here. They're not as experienced in getting over the hump, but it was not that long ago when they just made a Super Bowl appearance. So they're very, very dangerous for this Tampa Bay Buccaneers squad, but we'll see what happens. But anyways, Mr. Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp, they're going to be talking about it. I'm going to tune in. Let's get into it.
So Shannon, after what you saw last night, will Odell and the Rams beat Tom Brady and the Bucs in the divisional round next weekend? What a matchup.
Skip, I believe they will. I think this was the second week 2 matchup, and we saw what Stafford did when they were in SoFi. Guys played really well, and I always felt that they were gonna have to see each other. They were going to determine each other's playoff fate, and somebody's going to make someone go home. But I like this matchup. I like what the Rams can do defensively. They can generate pressure with their front four without having to sacrifice their back end. Now, a lot's going to be contingent, Skip. How healthy is Tristan Wirth and Ryan Jensen? Now, Tristan Wirth seems to be probably more iffy. BA said yesterday this thing's going to come down to a game time, going to take it up to the 18th hour to give him every opportunity to be able to play, because if he can't play, that means Leonard Floyd, that means Von Miller, and sometimes they'll even bump Aaron Donald out to an end, and he's going to go against the backup. And the backup, if I'm not mistaken, Skip, got injured in that game against the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday. So that's going to be a huge problem. Okay, that's going to be a huge problem if they're missing those 2 offensive linemen. But I like what they can do offensively. They're going to spread the ball around, because you saw what Arizona did. They're like, we are not letting Cooper Kupp get 14, 15 catches today.
If the LA Rams, I believe that's what Mr. Shannon Sharp was saying, if the LA Rams are missing some offensive linemen, that can be a very big problem, because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, of course, I believe, still do have a very consistent defense. They have a very decent defense. And all in all, if they're able to get to Matthew Stafford early, that's the big question also about Mr. Matthew Stafford. How well is he going to perform in this game? That's why this game, in my opinion, is also so exciting. Will Matthew Stafford overall be able to get over the hump over Tampa Bay? Now, in my opinion, it's probably not going to matter anyway, because I don't see him beating Green Bay, because I don't trust him in big game situations against a 50-50 matchup usually, or at least overall against a team that, in my opinion, is more than likely going to be in a favorable position. But this is the 50-50 matchup. Now, usually Matthew Stafford overall would choke games, games like that away. That's why I'm favoring Tampa Bay by a little bit. But like I said, we'll see what Matthew Stafford is made of in this game.
Matthew Stafford did a great job.
But like I said, Matthew Stafford, he's pretty much another Dak Prescott or Kirk Cousins, except in my opinion, he's a little bit better and greater than probably those two, at least debatably. I would certainly put him over Kirk Cousins, but him and Dak Prescott, I guess they would somewhat be in the same league. But when it comes down to it, he has a very, very big problem in big game situations, especially if you can get to him early. And overall, of course, the more that you can get him to mess up, the more chances of a game you have. Tom Brady, even when he's rattled a little bit, he may throw certain interceptions, but the thing is about Tom Brady is that, even if he's a person that, can get countered here and there, or, even if he gets picked off, Tom Brady capitalizes usually very, very well, especially when he needs to. So even if he does make mistakes, he gets back on that horse when it comes down to it. He's very calm, he's very cool, he's very collective, and overall he just gets focused on what he needs to do. When Matthew Stafford makes mistakes, he's sputtered all over the place. So it'll be very interesting.
Finding Odell, finding Higbee. And then when they started, these other guys, and then Cooper Kupp made his catches when given the opportunity. I like the two-headed monster that they have with Cam Akers. Skip, that's a miracle. I've never heard of it. When I heard this guy was being activated after tearing an Achilles in January, I said, active for what? He ain't played, Skip, 6 months, 173 days. He tore his Achilles in July. He's playing meaningful minutes on a playoff team in the playoffs. We know what Sony Michel can do because, Skip, we saw him against the Ram teams in the Super Bowl go for 100 yards. So we know he's battle-tested and can run the football. This is going to be a very good game. I think Tom Brady thought that there was a great chance they would see this team again at some point. I think Sean McVay thought they would see this team again down the line at some point, and here we are. But the Rams have the type of football team that could go to Tampa and beat Tampa. Tampa knows that. They'll be on their best behavior. But it all starts with...
I think they do know that. And I think that Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that they're going to elude a lot of confidence. But, you know, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think that they're going to elude a lot of confidence. But I think they know that they're going to have to really cross their T's and dot their I's in this game. They can't make any mistakes. Really, neither of these teams can make any mistakes. And that's the big question. You know, all in all, can they get to Tom Brady? Can they get to Matthew Stafford? Who is going to make the crucial mistakes first? Or who knows? Maybe neither side will make that many of crucial mistakes. That'll mean that they'll have to rely on their offense. And both offenses are very decently talented. But the LA Rams overall have the more talented offense. But they have that major kryptonite, which is Mr. Matthew Stafford. In a lot of big games, he does not perform so well. So we'll see what happens.
What can they do with number 12? Can they get him off of that spot? It's a 7x9. It's the pocket, 9 yards deep, 7 yards wide. Can you get him off that spot and force him to move left, force him to move right? But, Skip, you know how they want to do it. He got the ball out in, I think, 2.1 seconds, they said, which is the fastest since 2016, 2017. Maybe when they played the Chargers. Skip, you remember that playoff game against the Chargers when Joey Bosa said, I can't get there because every time I get there, the ball's gone. That's what they're going to try to do. So you're going to have to disrupt some receivers, but you're going to have to give the defensive line a chance to get there. And that job would be made a lot easier if Worth and Jensen are not in that starting lineup. But I like the Rams' chances. And we're going to have a lot of do betting on this game because I know you're going to try to get your little 8 cases back. But I think we might have went to 9, Skip. I think we might have went to 9.
No, 8. It was 8.
Last week, I think we went to 9. I think we got to pull the tape.
No, we got to pull the tape. It was 8 because you...
You know, overall, that Skip Bayless is depressed when there's no smiles from him overall talking about Tom Brady. He's so depressed from this Dallas Cowboys overall getting eliminated from the first round of the playoffs. And overall, I'm a little bit saddened too because I was actually rooting for them. I was hoping that they would finally get over the hump. But, you know, I mean, certain people blame Jerry Jones. Certain people blame Mike McCarthy. I think that it's all a little bit of everything. But Dak Prescott, in my opinion, he's not going to be your future quarterback that leads you anywhere. He's just not. He's on that same level of Matthew Stafford and Kirk Cousins. He's not going to lead you anywhere past the second round. It just is what it is, you know. So it's whatever. But Skip Bayless, you better hope over that Tom Brady wins this matchup this Sunday. You better hope, otherwise he's just going to drink a whole bottle of bleach when it comes down to it. You won't even dare to come into work.
Choked on 9 because you didn't have that kind of guts. I bet against my Dallas Cowboys. Okay, I'm not going to laugh at anything you just said about Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. and company in Tampa Bay. But I am going to warn you once more. There's one man in sports I do not bet against when the money gets pushed to the middle of the table, and that's number 12 in Tampa Bay. Now, you have me on the run. You have me backed up against the wall. You got Brady backed up against the wall.
I agree. This is, to be honest with you, the LA Rams may even be a more potential tough matchup for that of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers than what the Green Bay Packers are. Now, some people may say, well, why do you say that? Because I think that Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers still have a little bit of the mental edge over that of the Green Bay Packers, even if they do go into Lambeau, which of course they're going to if they make it, to that round. But when it could, both teams, that is. But when it comes down to the LA Rams, this is pretty much going to be a fresh start for them. And on top of that, they have the side advantage overall, in the regular season. So this is at least, that one win over them. So this is going to be very particularly interesting.
Because he is down his top 2 targets from the year. There's obviously no more AB, and there's obviously no more Chris Godwin. I don't know if playoff Lenny, as in Leonard Fournette, is going to be able to go on his hamstring. I don't know and doubt that Ronald Jones, is going to be able to go. So all of a sudden you got me again because you got Brady backed up against the wall without 2/3 of his rushing attack that was so predominant last year down the stretch as they rolled to the Super Bowl. And you got me again because the Rams are a nemesis for Brady and company. Not exactly in the same way that New Orleans has been a nemesis, but it's close. Because as you know, it was last year on November 23rd, on Monday Night Football, that the Rams went to Tampa with Jared Goff at quarterback and won that game 27-24. And they were pretty tough on Brady that night. He
I actually don't personally remember that game. We'll see if they can do it again.
did not have a great night. He had a QBR of 49, which is a notch below average. And he threw for only 216, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And Jared Goff outplayed him with the QBR of 80. Again, 27-24 in that game. Then we fast forward to this year, September 26th, out here, Southern California at SoFi. The Rams won 34-24. They sacked Brady 3 times. He did throw for a ton of yards because he ended up throwing for 432 yards, but he did not have a great QBR. He had a 63, which is not terrible, but it's not Brady-esque. So you can say that the Rams have the Bucs number because I'm going to give you the combined rush yards in those 2 games. In the first, this game this year, the Bucs rushed 13 times for a grand total of 35 yards, and the leading rusher was Tom Brady with 3 carries for 14 yards. In that game last year, it was even worse. It was 18 carries for 42 yards. So I'm going to combine those and tell you that in those 2 games, the Buccaneers averaged 2.5 yards per carry. Well, you don't think that's going to heap more and more pressure on the 44-year-old quarterback who might not have his right tackle for this game against a
Skip Bayless overall, he pulls that 44-year-old card overall, just like the Bernard Hopkins fans used to pull overall, the 43-year-old card whenever he would lose a big fight. Don't get me wrong. It's amazing what Tom Brady overall has been able to do at the age of 44. But Tom Brady has to show up big in this game overall just like he has before because Tom Brady has had an amazing season. He made the Pro Bowl this season. So what does that mean? He's still one of the top quarterbacks in the league. So Tom Brady is going to have to perform well in this game as well. But that being said, I don't think that Tom Brady feels really any pressure at this point in time in his career. I mean, how do you? You're a 7-time Super Bowl champion and 3-time MVP. But maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. I'm not in that situation. Of course, I suppose to a degree when you're always competing, there's always some sort of pressure on you.
Rush led by the guy you say is one of the greatest defensive players ever and the current best defensive player ever, obviously, in Aaron Donald. So you got me, you got me, you got me. And I also would like to remind everybody, because I guarantee you Brady's going to be looking at this video this week, that the killer play in this year's game on September 26th at SoFi came early in the 3rd quarter. This throw went for 75 yards to Deshaun Jackson, who is no longer a Ram, now replaced effectively by Odell Beckham Jr. If we could see the throw.
That's another big question in the game. How will Odell Beckham Jr. perform overall in this matchup? The first playoff game I ever seen him in when he was with the New York Giants that many years ago, I believe. I think maybe it was against the Green Bay Packers, but I don't remember. He performed so horribly. I mean, he had multiple drop catches. He had like 3 drop catches in that playoff game. From what I remember, the last playoff game, apparently from what I heard, he performed somewhat well. But there's also going to be more pressure on him in this game. There's going to be a better defense. So it'll be very interesting.
That just lit up the afternoon and had Coach McYay. Oh, we don't have it. I'm sorry. I thought we did have it. But I remember Coach McYay, as in Coach McVay, ran all the way down the sideline, trailing the play, ran all the way up the tunnel to congratulate Deshaun for that 75-yard catch that made it 21-7 Rams, and it broke it open. And do I need to remind you that coming off the field at halftime, Coach McYay was butt-slapping everybody, just going nuts like they were about to win the Super Bowl over Brady and company when it was 14-7. And again, they had their way in that game. They basically had their way in that game a year ago at Tampa. But I'm going to remind you what happened at Breeze last year when you thought that, my God, New Orleans has got...
That's true. And Tom Brady said, that's what separates the all-time greats, even from just the greats or just from the good quarterbacks. They can turn it up on a whole nother level that most people cannot. So that's the difference between Tom Brady and about 99% of other quarterbacks. But when it comes down to it, this is going to be very particularly interesting because this LA Rams team, they're a way bigger threat, in my opinion, than what the New Orleans Saints were last year. I mean, even though they were very decently talented, Drew Brees at that point in time, I mean, he was just done. He had no more power in his arm, and Drew Brees has never been known for extraordinary arm power. But, I mean, there was no more power in his arm. I mean, if he was going to have to throw a ball past 20 yards, it was it was getting picked off in that game.
Brady's number. Remember with the number they did on Brady at Tampa in that Sunday night game during the regular season last year? It was a debacle of a disaster. Worst game I've ever seen Tom Brady play. And he turns it around with a lot of help from his defense. And what was it? 3 interceptions and another turnover, a fumble lost by Jared Cook.
And a fumble by Jared Cook.
Yep, it was 4 turnovers. Okay? All right? I did see the Tampa defense take off as in playoff launch, as in Super Bowl launch this past Sunday against Philadelphia. So I think they will be ready. I'm still going to pick.
They did look good when it came down to it, but the Philadelphia Eagles, not only are they heavily inexperienced, at least the majority of them, especially that quarterback Jalen Hurts, who, to be quite honest with you, I don't really think is even that talented, but it is what it is. But the defense did look good.
The GOAT, because...
And once again, the good thing about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the good thing about having that very excellent veteran, Tom Brady on your team is that he knows when to capitalize and when to counter and when to attack on someone else's mistakes.
I don't bet.
It's like a great counter puncher. That's what Tom Brady is.
Against the GOAT in games like this, but I give you every point you just made, and I will end with one last one. A year ago at Tampa on that Monday night, Robert Woods got 15 targets. 15 targets. That's AB kind of force feeding, right? 15 targets, caught 12 for 120. Now, Cooper Kupp had a big night, too. He caught 11 for 145. But Robert Woods, 12 for 130. Obviously, he is gone, not forgotten, but he is also being replaced by Odell Beckham Jr., who did, in single coverage last night, have a pretty nice game. He caught 4 balls for 54, including that big 31-yarder. And he did catch the fade route for the touchdown, right, on that kid, Marco Wilson, the rookie 4th-round pick from Florida. I think we have that. Do we have the...
That dude, Kyler Murray, overall, even though he looked like he could play during the regular season, I think that defenses and coaches have finally learned overall how to somewhat stop him and nullify him. And that first game overall against the LA Rams, I mean, goddamn, that might be the worst first playoff game that I've ever seen for a first-year quarterback, other than maybe Cam Newton when he first played against the San Francisco 49ers.
Fade route touchdown, here we go. Okay, he gets single.
Or Lamar Jackson when he faced off, I believe, against, that was in his first year when he lost to the Tennessee Titans. I think he lost to the Bills the first year, but I could be wrong. I can't remember.
Coverage, and to Matt Stafford's credit, he just throws it up. Well, Odell can still catch it. I don't think he's near what he used to be in his first 2 years with the Giants, but that was a sweet throw and a very nice catch. Got his feet down. And again, he's on a 4th-round rookie, and he took advantage. And he gets nothing but single coverage because that's what's going to happen when Cooper Kupp's on the other side.
Well, that's what happens, Skip, and that's what you're going to have to take advantage of, Skip. And I tell people this all the time. When I went to Baltimore, I knew I wasn't going to get the same opportunities that I got in Denver. First of all, I didn't have the same level of quarterback, and that was not how we were going to win. So you just have to make the most of your opportunity when the opportunity presents itself. Odell understands.
I agree. And that's going to be very interesting to see how Odell and Matthew Stafford take advantage of that opportunity. Will they be able to perform? Because both Odell Beckham Jr. and Matthew Stafford, especially in very, very big game situations, they've actually been known to fuck up a little bit overall too much in some of the big game situations for Odell's sake in the playoffs. So that'll be very interesting. But of course he seemed to perform very decently well in the last playoff game. Can he do it again?
Now, for the most part, Skip, this might be a totally different situation. He gets single coverage, and they try to roll coverage to Cooper Kupp. He's going to have to win.
Yep.
He's going to get a lot. There's a potential for him to get a lot more footballs this week than he has at any point in time in his Rams career. I believe he'll be up to the challenge because what Odell can still do, Skip, he still has that lateral quickness. He still can, that phone booth step, and
Yep.
he's a high point ball catcher. He's not a body catcher. He's a hand catcher. So that's why somebody at his size does a great job on fade routes because he high points the ball as well as anybody in football, and especially for his size, he might be the best at it because Odell might be 6 foot tall, but he can high point the ball, has great athleticism. Skip, if anybody can run a game without a run game, it's Tom Brady. Because we know, we saw down 28-3, Skip, in the Super Bowl. The run game was eventually known. He's like, I don't even want a run game. All you doing is just let me stay in this rhythm because you're going to break my rhythm by making me hand the ball off. So if anybody's equipped to handle a situation where some of their running game might be less than ideal, it's Tom Brady.
Yeah.
But the Rams match up really well against this team. But Skip, you know all
I agree.
game come down to
If this were a greater quarterback, excuse me, overall, if this were, maybe Aaron Rodgers or, even if this were like a Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, I'd probably favor the LA Rams. But Matthew Stafford is my big question.
turnovers. And that's what happened. New Orleans had the game in control until Drew started turning the ball over, and then Jared Cook. They were about to go up 14, Skip, at least 10.
They were.
Because they had gotten in field goal range, maybe 14. And then Junior makes that great play, and Tom goes down, gets a touchdown, and they don't look back after that. So the Rams are Matthew Stafford's going to have to do a great job of taking care of the football. But Skip, this is why last night you saw why they went and got Von Miller. He's not the Von from Super Bowl 50. But if you single him, he still can bend the edge on you.
I mean, their front overall is really great. I mean, not only do they have Von Miller, but I believe they have a few other players that I can't really remember the name of at the current moment in time. But Aaron Donald, of course, the monster. I mean, they're going to have to watch out for that front line all the live long damn day. But that's not even talking about their defensive backs like Jalen Ramsey, I believe, who's still there.
Get home.
Yep.
And it's a lot easier to get to Tom because you know Tom is going to be there. It's hard to get to Kyler Murray because, Skip, you can't run past him. You run past him, he's going to jump out the window and go. So you got to, once you get even with him, you got to try to bend the pocket. It's going to be very interesting to see Leonard Floyd, Ashawn Robinson, Aaron Donald, Von Miller. What is Raheem going to do to put pressure on Tom Brady without sacrificing that back end?
I hear you. I fear it for Tom. Again, he went down 3 times against the Rams this year on September 26th. And yet, last night, Kyler Murray, I'm a big fan. We're going to talk about his future later in the show. He played simply the single worst game I've ever seen him play. Ever.
I agree. Like I said, that might be the worst NFL playoff, introduction that I've ever personally seen for an NFL quarterback, other than that of Cam Newton.
It wasn't even close. I've watched him a lot of games. I've even watched a lot of his high school games in which he never lost in the state of Texas. And I don't know what got into him or
I mean, shit, Joe Burrow and fucking Lamar Jackson may have even had a bet. Lamar Jackson may have even been better against the Tennessee Titans when he got eliminated against them in the second round, I believe, than what Kyler Murray did overall against the LA Rams yesterday. I mean, shit.
Out of him last night, but he was immediately out of rhythm, out of sync. He lost his poise and he lost his accuracy. I've never seen him stink as much as he stunk last night. So that contributed to the downfall. And then the Rams hammered away with Sony and Cam Akers. And by the way, congrats to Dr. Elatraj. I know you know him, Neil Elatraj, for getting him back on that 20 kill. I don't know how he did it, but it's a miracle.
Skip, I don't need to skip.
Again, okay, but 140 yards rushing against Arizona. Can they get 140 against Tampa? I doubt it. So once again,
we'll see about that. But the big question also is Tom Brady and Leonard Fournette, if he's able to come back, or they can be able to rush the football against the LA Rams? Because in my opinion, you have to rush the football a little bit, in order to win a game the most of the time. So we'll see what happens.
Back to what I told you from the start. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know if they need that many. I don't know if they need 140. Can they get to 100? Skip, they just need to be in a situation where the Bucs can't just pin their ears back. A lot of times when you're playing a team that can rush the passer, like the Rams, like Tampa can, you run the football just so they can have to hold it there just for an extra second. I just don't want you flying off the ball, pinning your ears back, coming after my quarterback. I just want to have you to think about it. Man, they might run that draw here. Man, what if they hit this draw? What?
I agree.
I just want to let you think about that. But
Rushing the football in the game overall, I mean, it's just as important as passing.
just a second. And that's what you're going to have to do. Can they get 140 against Tampa? Probably not. But can I put that seed in your mind where you're just not flying off the ball?
Okay? Can I plant this seed or replant it in the back of your psyche? I still don't trust Matthew Stafford in a playoff game. I know he finally...
Checkmate. Bingo. I agree with you, Skip Bayless. That's the main question that I have over about the LA Rams. Matthew Stafford may be able to escape just with winning this game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But Matthew Stafford is a big question. Like I said, if this was another quarterback, even if this was Jared Goff from a few years ago when he was still playing decently well, even though I never thought that he was that, good in big game situations, I would probably predict the LA Rams to win this game. But Matthew Stafford, in my opinion, I don't know.
Broke through in 1-1 last night. I think it was the equivalent of Tampa beating Philadelphia. I think it was pretty easy, maybe too easy. And ultimately, this game will come down to, will Brady make that one throw or will Matt Stafford make...
I agree with you. This is like a fight overall between two very big punchers. It's like that one fight overall between Gerald McClellan and Julian Jackson. Who's going to land that first big punch?
That one throw or one big mistake. My money's on Brady. You can have Matt Stafford all day and all night, and good luck.
Well, the problem is that even if Tom Brady, even if he makes a couple of mistakes, his defense overall is good enough, I think, to the point to where they could possibly capitalize. And Tom Brady always capitalizes usually very well off of his opponent's mistakes. But can Matthew Stafford be completely mistake-prone overall? Or, is he completely, not going to make a mistake for the whole entire minutes of the game? I'm not so sure about that. I think he was able to do that against the Arizona Cardinals. That was heavily inexperienced when it comes down to it with a new coach, I believe, when it comes down to it. And, someone inexperienced in the playoffs at the current moment in time. But this is a very well-coached team. They have Todd Bowles, I believe, still as the defensive coordinator. We'll see what happens.
Well, Skip, it'd be hard to pick against Brady making a mistake because generally over the course of his career in playoff moments, he has not made a lot of mistakes. You probably have to go once every 6 or 7 games to find him that make a mistake that costs his team, considering he's only...
To be honest with you, every time that I've watched Tom Brady, I don't know if there's ever been one game, maybe the Philadelphia Eagles game, if you want to pin that on Brady a little bit. Besides that game, I can't name one other game where Tom Brady, in my opinion, made such a crucial mistake where it really cost his team the game. And if it did, it was because it was against such an extraordinary defense like the New York Giants or the Denver Broncos.
He lost 11 playoff games in his illustrious 22-year career, lets you know he doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes. He's normally not...
And you know what? Some of even the greatest of athletes, they're not always mistake-prone. But the greatest of athletes, they show up in the big moments. That's why me and my friend, we were conversing the other day about Peyton Manning and Joe Montana. And he basically was talking about Peyton Manning, and he said, just one Super Bowl game doesn't define a whole entire career. No, it doesn't define a whole entire career. But once again, if you're a person like a Peyton Manning to where your playoff record is only positive by like one game, which I believe it is with Mr. Peyton Manning, what does that really say about your career? You're a 5-time, NFL MVP, but you only overall won half of your Super Bowls, which is only 2 Super Bowls. You couldn't even make the same amount of appearances as a Tom Brady. What does that really say about you? And when you really take a look at Peyton Manning, he fucked up a lot of the times in the big games. He either threw a pick when it came down to it, or there's a certain amount of other things. Tom Brady, even if he throws a pick overall, even some of the most confident of athletes, they might be able to make mistakes here and there, but they bounce back. There's just certain athletes like that, like a Matthew Stafford. If he makes a mistake, is he going to be able to bounce back? I don't know.
The reason why they lose a game. They've lost, obviously, 11 playoff losses. But for the most part, he's not the reason why they lose. Yes, he's made a mistake. They've gotten picked off. But I'm with you on that one. I'm not betting no money that says, you know what, it's going to be Tom Brady that makes the mistake that cost his team the game. It could happen.
Yes.
But that would shock a lot of
the Rams
people
are
if
going
it
to
did
win.
happen.
Okay? You're already on the record. The Rams are going to pull this off.
I'm picking, Skip, I picked the Rams. I told you. Now, I would have liked it better had the Rams lost the first time because I don't like teams that beat the team the first time, kind of like Georgia and Alabama, Skip. Because the team that lost the game,
Sure.
Skip, we can go back and look at the reasons why we lost the game, where the team that won says,
We'll see. But if you're overall making the point that the Rams overall are coming in here a little bit pretentious or overall, thinking that they have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on their heels, I think that it's a good thing to feel that you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on their heels, but they're taking this game very seriously. I don't have any doubt about that whatsoever. Sean McVay hopefully comes up with a very good game plan, at least, for the LA Rams' sake, and we'll see what happens.
they're not looking at some of the things that could have tripped them up. They're just looking at, we won, and look at what we did. But I'm gonna have faith in Sean McVay. I'm gonna have faith in Matthew Stafford that they get it.
We'll see about that. Having faith in Matthew Stafford is like having faith in Dak Prescott or Kirk Cousins or DeMar DeRozan. It's usually very, very, misplaced. But we'll see what happens.
Done. They play Sunday. I think they play Sunday. Yeah.
Thank you for watching.
I can tell that Shannon Sharp, he's not 100% confident in his prediction, but I don't blame him. I don't blame him for picking the LA Rams. I don't necessarily blame him. But neither of these guys are very confident in their prediction. Like I said, this is a game that really can go either way. It's like that Sugar Ray Leonard versus Tommy Hearns matchup. Whoever lands that first big punch could potentially overall be the winner. Whoever makes that first fuck up could be the winner. So we'll see what happens. But I'm picking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just ever so slightly because, like I said, I just don't trust Matthew Stafford. But we'll see all know what happens. They may be able to beat them overall just because they have some injuries and they have some missing pieces. And if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are not able to get, a decent amount of rushing yards, or at least, if their rushing is completely shut down, the LA Rams more than likely may be able to pull out the game. But we'll see what happens. Leonard Fournette, I believe, is returning. It'll be very interesting. But I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a very close game. But we'll see all know what happens. Anyways, that's everybody for today. And I'll talk to you all later.